Hi, welcome back to the Brandon Show. This episode is going to be regarding some thoughts I've had about the fall of Rome. For example, emperors had said that the men were worse than the worst of criminals because they were not willing to marry the women. They didn't consider the women to be fit for marriage or family oriented life anymore. And that made the Romans weak, and no one wanted to be in the military, basically. I'm just going to draw some parallels with how that's similar to the situation today, where a lot of men don't feel that they have anything worth fighting for as far as like family or women. Kind of like back in the day with the Germanic mythologies. They had Sequere, the dragon slayer, and Brunhilde. He climbed the tower. He pierced the ring of flames on his horse, went up the tower, and kissed her. She's like origin of the Sleeping Beauty, and he cuts through the chainmail and kisses her, and she awakens. That's kind of a reflection also on the esoteric level of higher self. You see energy going up the spine to the brain, like the Kundalini energy, because he's going up this tower through a ring of fire. So you can see there's parallels of that too. But yeah, moving back to this. So if there's no women or family worth fighting for, then they're not going to want to put their lives on the line. If you've ever read Tacitus on Germania, talked about the Germanic tribes, and it said that they would line the women and the children up behind them before they went to battle, and that would make them fight even harder because they knew what would happen to their women and their children. You don't so much see that today. You don't see men line up and fight against some empire, some invading force now. Roman times towards the fall of Rome, evidently. But one thing I thought a lot about as well is in Rome, the women that were prostitutes, they had these stamps on their shoes, and it would make a trail, and then potential customers could follow them back to wherever. And I've been thinking about how the OnlyFans tags that say "Follow Me" is the modern example of that. One organized. Yes, there are indeed Roman sources and archaeological finds suggesting that certain women, especially prostitutes, wore sandals with inscriptions or metal studs on the soles that left imprints in the dirt. Some of these impressions carried words like "follow me," "follow me on OnlyFans," "Sequere me," or names of brothels. The idea was that anyone walking behind would literally be invited to follow the trail of the prostitute services. That can be compared to modern digital self-advertising platforms such as OnlyFans, where content creators leave trails or tags, links, and posts across social media to guide potential clients toward their page. Both represent a kind of self-branding public space. In Rome, the advertisement was physically inscribed in footwear, broadcasting availability to strangers. Today, creators use hashtags, bio links, and tags online, leaving a digital trace that invites followers to seek them out. Similarity: both methods convert visibility into economic opportunity using cultural technologies, sandals, inscriptions, and hashtags, social media now. Difference: in Rome, this was largely limited to lower status women in sex work, often under regulation or exploitation. In the modern world, platforms like OnlyFans allow broader forms of monetized self display, often framed as empowerment, but still debated in terms of exploitation. So the parallel works as a continuity of self promotion and intimate economies, even though the medium has shifted from dirt roads to digital feeds. You can see that. And like I was saying, the emperor would start to persecute the men because they refuse to marry women like that. You know, point in it, and they're not gonna go die in battle for these women. You know, they make them be excluded from games, entertainment, everything. I've noticed that with. I'm not into the gaming and stuff, but there's guys like they're saying they're going to police what they're talking about over games now, and they're saying, "Oh, it's radicalizing guys" and all this other stuff. And then you'll see a lot of these women they'll get into the gaming. They'll wear like skimpy clothes and stuff and try to find guys, send them money, and so they'll invade that space as well. Even go after the guys and try to find guys to send them money, basically. Yeah, that's something I was thinking about. Okay. Traditional Roman family life, mas maiorum, how women's roles in the household management, child rearing, and arranging alliances were seen as crucial to Roman strength. Changing social norms by the late Empire, elite Roman women often had more independence, which some contemporaries saw as a breakdown of traditional values. Marriage and fertility rates declining, birth rates among the Roman elite worried statesmen since the empire needed manpower for armies and administration. Moral critiques, Roman writers such as Juvenal and Tacitus linked what they saw as women's indulgence or independence with broader moral decline. Modern perspectives, historians today caution the blaming women oversimplifies the issue. Economic crisis, overexpansion, political corruption, invasions all played their major roles. Other stuff there. The role of women, family life, and the decline of Rome. The fall of the Roman Empire has long fascinated historians who have proposed countless explanations for its collapse. One strand of thought dating back to antiquity itself is the belief of the weakening of traditional family life undermined Rome's social and military fabric. In particular, some Roman commentators suggested that women were no longer suited to marriage and child rearing, and that this contributed to the declining birth rates, weakened family bonds, and shortage of loyal defenders for the state. While this perspective reflects the cultural anxieties of Rome's elites, it must be considered alongside with broader economic, political, and military causes of the empire's decline. Women and Roman family ideal. From the early Republic onward, Roman society placed heavy emphasis on the family unit, the familia, as the foundation of civic and military strength. Women were expected to be wives, mothers, and guardians of household, producing children who would serve as Roman soldiers, farmers, and citizens. This traditional order was celebrated under the ideology of maius mearum, customs of the ancestors which linked private virtue to public power. By the late Republic and early Empire, however, observers began to complain that women of the elite classes were abandoning this ideal. Writers like Juvenal and Tacitus accused women of preferring luxury, independence, or social ambition over motherhood. Laws passed by Augustus, such as the Lex Julia de Meritandis or Danubis, tried to encourage marriage and childbirth by penalizing celibacy and rewarding large families, showing that even at the height of Imperial Rome's leaders were concerned about demographic decline. Family decline and military weakness. The Roman army relied heavily on citizens willing to fight for the state. In earlier centuries, families produced numerous sons who were seen as assets both economically and militarily. However, as family sizes shrank among the Roman elite, fewer men, citizens' background were available for service by the 3rd century CE. The empire was increasingly dependent on recruiting non-Romans and mercenaries, which weakened the sense of loyalty between soldiers and the Roman state. Some Roman thinkers directly linked this military decline to women's roles, as women were unwilling to marry, raise children, or dedicate themselves to family life. Men supposedly lost both incentive to form stable households and the motivation to defend them. In this view, the weakening of domestic virtue contributed to the weakening of civic duty. A broader perspective. Modern historians, however, caution against oversimplifying Rome's fall at the fall of women or family life. While it is true that low fertility among Roman elites contributed to manpower shortages and the empire's decline, had deeper economic crises, political instability, corruption over expansion, and relentless pressure from the Germanic and other barbarian groups all played central roles. Furthermore, many of the complaints about women reflect more about male anxieties than about social reality. Women across empire continued to manage households, participate in life, and raise children. Their contributions were essential to Roman society, even in its final centuries. Conclusion: the idea that Roman women's supposed rejection of marriage and family duties caused men to lose will to defend an empire reflects an ancient moral critique rather than a complete historical explanation. It is true that the demographic decline and weakened family structures contributed to Rome's difficulty in maintaining a strong citizen army, and some contemporaries saw women's changing roles as emblematic of this crisis. Yet Rome's downfall cannot be reduced to one cause. The story of women, family life, and decline of Rome reminds us deeply cultural values are tied to political power and how anxieties about gender roles often emerge during crisis. So, of course, the internet's going to gaslight me on to what degree women not being interested in family anymore and wanting to be fake hoes and want to be prostitutes would contribute to the fall of civilization. Of course, it's going to gaslight me on that, but I just want to put forward like the whole idea and all the parallels I'm seeing because it really does look the same to me. Like how can a society function if everybody wants to be a prostitute or a fake hoe? I don't see how anything will function that way. And even for that to function, there has to be guys that are protecting them for them to act that way, which makes no sense because like what I was essentially trying to say is like, why would men want to defend a bunch of hoes and a bunch of prostitutes? Like I understand if you were a pimp or something and they were paying you and you were getting money out of it, but I mean, if that's not the case, why would a guy want to put in all this work and put his life on the line to defend him? It don't make any sense. And if you have a whole society where the women want to be that way, like every woman wants to be a prostitute, then I don't see how it's going to work. Because I mean, can every guy be a pimp? I don't think that'll work either. You know what I'm saying? You can't have a world like that. So yeah, watching, like, subscribe, share my videos. If you're listening to this, you got any ideas for videos or any information that can help me put this stuff that I'm thinking about more in perspective, let me know. All right, until my next video, bye.